Hey everyone, welcome to the Nurturing Home podcast. Today I have my husband with me and we're going to do a little interview to talk about homeschooling and why we are choosing to homeschool and what the purpose of homeschooling and education is. So first of all, thank you.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
So a little bit of our story. Jordan and I both grew up homeschooled all the way through, preschool through high school. We were homeschooled by our moms. We also knew each other growing up. We were in a homeschool co-op together, and our moms were friends. So we have a unique story, I feel like, and a unique relationship with homeschooling because we grew up with that being our normal. That was our normal. That was what we were used to, and this is what we always thought, this is what we're going to do with our kids. So now that we are in the parent role, we are not only the ones that are choosing the curriculum and choosing the pathway that we're going to go with our homeschooling, but also the whys. And we're discovering and looking at our whys of what's our motive behind choosing these curriculums and why we're choosing homeschooling. And it's a different place to be.
Because when you're a kid and you're being homeschooled, you're not the one laying out the philosophy of what you're doing. You're just going along for the ride. And so it is different when you're an adult, you have kids of your own, and you've decided, hey, I'm gonna do this myself. And knowing what those whys are, I think, are very important. I don't think that they have to be, if somebody's listening and they're thinking about homeschooling and they're hearing all this, it doesn't have to be like super, original or just really like groundbreakingly, enlightened. It doesn't have to be this amazing philosophy. It can be really simple. It can be really practical. But it is really important to have your why, to sort of anchor yourself to. If things get hard or challenging, and they will, you can always go back to, this is why I chose to do it. And it's sort of one of those things of counting the cost, even, is like, you're saying yes to one thing is saying no to another thing. And in this case, saying yes to homeschooling, you're going to be saying no to a lot of, not having, your kids aren't going to be gone at school, you're not going to have that alone time that a lot of other parents have. And while we think that's worth it, that is a significant thing to say no to. So it is important to have those whys, and that's what we're having this conversation about.
So the first question I wanted to ask you is, what do you feel the purpose of education truly is, and what is it not?
Well, I could start with what it's not. And again, look, we're young. I'm only 30, and you're younger than me. So, if somebody's listening to this and that, they've been homeschooling for forever, we're still beginners. So this is our why right now. As we get wiser, these might change, but this is where we are right now, and I think we're happy with where we are right now. But let's start with that. What it's not. What it's not is raising your children to be these automatons who have memorized all the facts and they can rattle off all the facts, but they don't know how to think. They know all the right answers to something because they've memorized them, that rote memory kind of thing. That's not the way I want to raise my children. Is they have all the right facts that they have in their brain and they can pop them out at any time. I want to raise my children, and this is going into the why, or what it is. What it is for me, I want to teach our kids how to think, how to use the brain that they've been given by God. And I feel like if you teach your children how to think and how to use their faculties in that way, then no matter what they face in their life, they have a pretty good solid ground to stand on. Obviously, along with this, we want to raise them in biblical truth. So while we're teaching them how to think, we're also teaching them this is the objective truth. These are objective realities. This is who God is. This is who created you, and this is what your purpose is according to your Creator. So sort of teaching them their place in the world, and that sounds a little funny to say, their place in the world. But we do have a place in this world, and we want to, that's a part of their education, is knowing who they are and what their purpose is, but then also, how to use the tools that God's given them, their brains, logic, things like that. And so I think, to me, completely unrehearsed and just off the top of my head, that is the why behind education.
Right.
Yeah.
And just FYI, I'm holding a sleeping baby, so if you hear baby sounds, don't be alarmed. It is just Audrey asleep. Um, so yeah, I agree definitely that the goal of education is more than just teaching them knowledge, just teaching them facts, just following a checklist of like, okay, I've taught them all the things they need to know about history and math and science. It is so much deeper than that, and I think all children are born with this desire to learn, with this inquisitiveness, the toddler stage or like early childhood stage when you get all the whys of like why about everything. And they're just trying to figure out their world. They're just trying to figure out their environment. And it is a beautiful thing that they have this inquisitiveness and they have this desire to learn and to know things. And I think just in general with education, we can take education and really ignite that fire and fan that flame of desire to learn, or we can snuff it out. And I think the way that we orient school and orient education can do one of those two things.
Yeah.
And so if you take a kindergartner, and you sit them in a desk for, from 8 to 3 or whatever, and they have 15 minutes of recess, it is dramatically changing the way that they're understanding in their relationship with schooling and education versus the myriad of ways that you can make homeschooling look.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot more varied and a lot more relaxed, and something that you can, change depending on what your child needs and the way that they learn. So, in my opinion, like the goal of homeschooling, the goal of education for our family and in my own heart is to be able to fan the flames of their heart, of their desire to learn, to be able to meet them where they are in the way that they learn so that it can grow and they can develop. And they, like you said, that we can teach their brains how to think, how to view the world, how to take in information, but also like how to take in all of those things and then share it with the world.
Yeah.
Because you can teach a kid all these facts, you can teach them all this information, but if they don't know what to do with it, they don't know how to feel about it, how to think about it, and how to express it, it is like, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of teaching them all this anyway?
Yeah.
So being able to kind of go on from just that step A, but also to step B, and like teach them how to express themselves, to share their creations, to bring value to the world around them and to others. So
yeah, and I think a lot of like what I would consider American education philosophy is based in is just survivalism. Like, we want to teach them what they need to know in order to survive, in order to go out and get a job and operate in society. But I don't want it to be just mere survival. I do want it, like you said, to fan those flames. I don't want them to ever get out of the stage of asking why. I want that to continue for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Because because we believe in God and because we believe what the Bible says, if God created this universe, then the universe has something to say about God. And it's not just one thing. It's not like you look out into the universe and you're like, okay, I see what it's saying about God. You write it down, you're done. No, it's like a continual exploration. And that's what we're setting them up to do, is not just survive in this society and survive in this culture and get a job and, do those things that you basically need to do. But beyond that, I want them to send them off, and this sounds really cheesy, but send them off on the journey, of exploring the universe. Yeah. And I really think that creativity and exploration are very closely related, because creativity is just that, you're expressing what you've learned in that exploration. So teaching them, like you said, how to express and how to communicate. And so they go out in the universe, they go out into the world, they've explored, they've learned some whys, and now they can turn around and teach it to other people, adding value into the world. And I feel like that's a great way to survive. That's going beyond just a drudgery and going into, you're bringing beauty and value into your environment. I think that's really important.
Right. And I think it is a very good desire for parents and for us to not only want our children to survive in the world, but to thrive,
Mm,
and
yeah.
to have, rich and full relationships and lives and experiences. So I think that's another way of looking at education is not to just survive and be able to make it on your own, but to be able to thrive and
Yeah.
have that rich experience, that rich journey, like you mentioned.
Absolutely.
So the next question is, how does homeschool accomplish this goal?
Well, I think that homeschooling allows you to. There's a whole lot of customizability that you can do when you're homeschooling. For instance, like sometimes I work from home on Fridays, so I see homeschooling on Fridays mostly. I'm thankful for that. And, sometimes Friday morning we wake up, if it's a beautiful day outside, it's like, hey, it's time for a nature walk. And I get to see what you guys do with the rest of the days of the week, is y'all go out there at the times where a lot of the other kids their age are sitting at a desk, for 15 minutes and they have that 15-minute break or whatever. Um, but y'all get to go outside and like turn over logs and see bugs, and like
Yeah.
we live next door to our in-laws, and Uncle Ben comes over and he teaches them, this is this kind of bug,
Yeah.
and it's okay to pick this one up, but
Yeah.
don't touch that one.
He's like a
And yeah, he's a
biologist.
biologist, and so a lot of our science actually comes from him. But it's really cool to see that happen, and that doesn't really happen most of the time in a traditional school setting. So that kind of freedom to be able to go out and experience the world and have that be an education and not just, the cherry on top. It's not just the little bit of extra. It's not an extracurricular. It is the curriculum.
Right.
It
Right.
is this is the way we learn.
Right.
Because I think that's how we were designed to learn. We're not designed to learn only by sitting down, reading a book, and writing. I mean, that's very important, and we do that.
Right.
That is actually probably the majority of what we do. But the going out and experiencing the world, whether that's in nature or talking to other people, that's not extra. That's part of the main course
Right.
of education. And I feel like homeschooling really allows you to have a rich variety of experiences and have an educational focus in those experiences. So
Yes.
that's what I would say is probably the strength of homeschooling.
Right. And it depends, of course, on your child's age, but for our kids who are, like elementary school, like young kids, like kindergarten and first grade, preschool, the way that they learn is through play and is through
Mm-hmm.
discovery and imagination. So being able to go outside and read aloud to them and them to, pretend that they're on the prairie with Laura and Mary
Yeah.
is so much more effective, I feel like, and deeper for them, deeper in their experience of how they are taking in this information and understanding, and even being able to like do subjects like math outside and like hands-on kinetically choosing curriculum or even choosing just the place to do your
Mm-hmm.
lessons outside. Like literally the other day we were outside doing math and we were like picking up pine cones and leaves and things, and we were using those to do our adding and subtracting with.
Yeah.
There is so much room for the mom and the family, the parents, to like cultivate their family's culture with
Mm.
homeschooling, because you can cultivate it to be the right thing for your child, whatever their needs or their strengths or their weaknesses are, whatever the best way for them to learn. Like for example, like our kids really thrive with music, and I think most kids do. Like so when you're like learning Bible verses, or you're learning about a certain period of history, or you're learning, your multiplication tables, like learning those to song is so sweet. And being able to do those, learn facts and learn information through music and through play and through unit studies where you're immersing yourself into that time period,
Yeah.
where you're like cooking the recipes and making costumes, and it just gives a unique perspective. And I think homeschooling, of course, has that freedom where you can choose the curriculum that's best for your family, or even modify the curriculum in the best way for your kids, but also to have that like one-on-one space with your kids.
Mm.
Just for example, like we've been talking about the difference in homeschooling, rather than like sitting at a desk from 8 to 3. In the homeschooling world, a lot of times homeschooling days, school days, are not that long. It can
Yeah.
be, depending on the age of the child, it can be, like an hour that you're spending doing things. And you might think, oh, they're not covering as much as the classroom setting. No, actually, we are covering the same
Yeah.
amount as the classroom, but it takes that long to be able to teach it to 36-year-olds
Yeah.
versus 1 6-year-old. They can get it in an hour.
Yeah.
So there's so much beauty there, being able to like cover your information and your lessons in that shorter amount of time, and allows your family to do so many more things. But I agree with Jordan that it's not just that you're like, okay, we're going to read this book, we're going to finish this worksheet, and then we're that's our school. Everything about life can be school. Like cooking can be math, and cooking can be a great example, a great opportunity to teach your kids lots of different things.
Yeah.
And there can be, going to the store and going to the park and going to the library, going to visit someone. There's so many opportunities to use that to teach them things, because education is so much more than just like memorizing facts.
Yeah.
It is application, and it is really a way of life. Really, homeschooling is not something that you just like turn on and turn off. It's like a constant, continual thing.
Yeah.
That you do as a family.
Yeah. And I will say another really strong strength, a prominent strength, you really get to, as you're getting to know your child and what their personalities are like and what their natural bents are and how they think and how they see the world, you're able to really tailor suit their education to that. So, for instance, our son Andy has a very mathematical way of seeing the world. He really connects with numbers and data and patterns very, very well, and that's how he expresses himself. That's what he wants. He can listen to the same piece of music over and over and over, and like he knows everything about that, whatever he's listening to at that time. Like he's very extremely detail oriented and data oriented, and so he might connect much better with math on paper and like word problems and things like that, and
Right.
and remembering details. While Mia, our second, she has a more story way of viewing the world. She sees things more artistically. I don't want to say more creatively, because I think that analytical minds are still creative, but a more artistic way of seeing things, a more colorful way of seeing things. She connects more with aesthetic and beauty in the way things feel. And so we're able to turn things into stories for her. We're able to turn things into more sensory experiences and feeling connected things for her. And in a traditional classroom setting, you just can't do that. It's not that they don't want to do that. I think teachers would want to do that. You just can't, because you have too many children and not enough time and not enough resources. And so we have that freedom to really connect with our children and to know the way that they see the world, and to connect their education with that and to their benefit, I think. Yeah.
Right. And it is so, I don't know, so freeing as a parent to be able to have that freedom and that flexibility, to be able to say, okay, you really love math and you're really loving this curriculum and you are really loving these concepts. Let's do a whole semester of math in 1 month.
Yeah.
And let's go ahead and start algebra in 3rd grade if that's something that you really love. You're not like held back by other restraints, or other timelines. Or even, if your child is really loving botany, spend a whole semester learning about this tiny little aspect of this ecosystem, and get really in depth, because it is something that they are passionate about. It is beautiful to be able to like go in depth on certain things, when normally in a classroom setting it would have to be skimmed over so that you can get to the test and get stay on track.
Right.
So that's another beautiful thing. And I do think about, as a parent who is homeschooling, who has a lot more, I would say, like, they're the one that's directing their child's education. They're able to like, advocate and care for their child and for their needs, in a different way than maybe a parent would if they didn't have that same authority and that over their kids' education. So Jordan, how has being homeschooled yourself affected your experience in college and further education, and even in your workplace environment?
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a way it's negative affected me, and I feel like that's a lot of people's hesitancy towards homeschooling. Maybe they did know a homeschooling family and there was something weird about them. And you know what? There are weird people out there. But I can't think of a way it negatively affected me. The more I got to know my peers as I moved into college or work experiences, and, you know, the people I'm with, they had a different education experience than I did. Like, the differences between us were minimal. You know, like we were basically the same. So I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel isolated or anything like that. I do think that just the way that my mom and dad decided to educate us was very much an immersive way. So my mom really liked unit studies, and we would spend weeks immersed into one particular part of the world or time period or subject, and we would pull in a bunch of subjects into this unit study, but it was very immersive, and so I feel like that's affected the way that I see things. I tend to be a very immersive person. Once I get excited about something, I want to immerse myself fully into it, and everything about, you know, the way I'm thinking is drawn to that thing. So that's kind of the way that's affected me, just in the way I think. And I obviously carry that into the way I work. You know, I'm a writer, so when I'm writing an article, I get immersed into the topic. I Research is not my favorite thing to do, but I feel like, you know, it's helped me in that way. I do think it also has helped me, if there's something that I want to learn more about, just for me personally. I feel like I know how to do that.
Right.
I feel like I know how to find resources to educate myself on things in a much better way, because I didn't have everything spoon fed to me. I was encouraged to do my own research. I was encouraged to go out and read about things that I was interested in. And so I still carry that with me today. If I get interested in, for instance, I was, and I still am very interested in nutrition. And so I decided, you know what, I want to immerse myself in that. And I learned a whole lot about a lot of different perspectives. I went through a course and I got certified. I can't operate in my state, unfortunately, but I did get certified as a holistic nutritionist, and so that was a really fun thing to learn about and gain experience in, and that has an impact in my life. So I'm not saying that, you know, traditional ways of schooling, that people who come out of that don't have this as well, but I do think that my experience being homeschooled definitely connects with the way I operate and the way I think today as an adult, both in the way that I work professionally and just in my own personal life, in the way that I want to learn things. So,
Right. And I think, like we talked about before, like fanning the flame of inquisitiveness.
yeah,
I think as homeschoolers, sometimes when that flame is continuously throughout our childhood encouraged, then when we become adults, like we have this desire to always be growing in our knowledge, because learning never stops. Of course, when you graduate high school or college or whatever, like that's not the last day that you learn things. Like we're always, as humans, we're growing and changing and learning and maturing, and being able to have that love of learning and that love of just growing your own understanding of the world and who God is and who we are is something that I think my parents taught me through homeschool, because everything that we were learning, we had this eternal reality behind it.
yeah,
Even like through history and science and math, my mom would so often remind us that like you said before, like God is teaching us something about himself through his creation, through history, through time, through all that we can understand about the world around us. He is revealing things about himself. And like, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to apply that to our lives? Are we going to live differently tomorrow because of it? And I think that mindset is really important, especially as our kids get older, that we instill that with all of the things that we're teaching them. And that does carry on into adult life. And I agree, like, not that that can't happen if you're in the
yeah,
public school setting, but it's not something that you, as the parent, are daily doing through education. You're
right.
handing that off to someone else and hoping that they're doing that. Or you're doing that when they get home after school.
Yeah, for the in between, you know, getting home from school, having, you know, a bunch of homework probably, and then probably spending a couple of hours with them before they go to bed in
Right.
some cases,
Or whenever.
or whenever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So I did want to talk about a few common concerns that people have with homeschooling and if they're avoidable. And I think one of the most common ones that I hear just from people that I know. And that I remember mom hearing growing up was
Yep.
like, how do you socialize your kids if they are homeschooled? Like, aren't they going to be like socially awkward, or aren't they going to like miss a really beneficial aspect of just growing up not being surrounded
Yeah.
by kids?
Mm.
And of course, I don't think that you have to deprive your kids of socialization when you're homeschooling them. There's so many ways that you can be involved with other families, with other groups and co-ops, and you can play still. You can still play sports,
Oh yeah.
depending on where you live and what resources are near you. But one of the things about that question that makes me kind of laugh is to think about how in the classroom setting, the child is surrounded by their friends, but maybe by like 15 other kids, and they're told all day that they can't talk to them. And
Yeah.
maybe at lunch they can talk to them, maybe at their 15-minute recess.
Uh-huh.
So I don't really feel that that is appropriate socialization
Right.
for kids. I think maybe in the homeschool setting when they are able to, you know, bond and create these deep relationships with their family and their friends, and go to the library at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday,
Mm.
and talk to the librarian and talk to the other homeschool kids, and have relationships beyond just the 15 minutes at recess or
Yeah.
the lunch break.
Well, I think too, a lot of times when that question comes up, people are thinking, "Oh, well, I had so many friends in, band, or I had so many friends in, this club that I was a part of in high school, or whatever." And this is what they're thinking of when they think about socialization. But, growing up, like, I didn't have to have a club to have friends,
Oh,
I just had
yes.
there just had to be a child in the same proximity as me, and it was like, okay, let's play.
Yes,
And
yes.
so
And you can have all those clubs and
oh
groups
yeah,
and
sure,
bands and
and they
church
certainly do.
events and things as
Yeah.
homeschoolers.
Just get together if you're curious. Just investigate your local homeschool support group, and I'm sure that they have a huge list of things going on that
Right.
you can get. But again, like, you don't need to have this sort of artificial situation set up for kids to have fun with each other and get to know each other and have that social interaction. Just put kids in the same room, like, get together with other families who have kids their age. That socialization. They don't have to have this, 30-minute, pre-planned thing where they have this activity. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be
Right.
really, really organic.
Right. Lastly, I'd like to talk with you about encouragement that we might have for families considering homeschooling as second generation homeschoolers.
Yeah. Well, there might be some concerns that some people have if they're considering homeschooling about like the legal aspect of that. I know there's no end to horror stories that people hear about, like, this homeschool family was visited by the Child Protective Services, extreme things like that. I had a conversation with a lawyer recently on this subject. I was actually interviewing him for an article, and he said, "Look, the U.S. is largely like friendly towards homeschooling. Yeah, the laws vary from state to state, and you should, do the legal thing and obey the law in your state. But the hostility towards homeschooling is not really from the government. It's more, there's more from the culture, I guess, and from people who just don't understand what's going on. So don't worry so much about that. Just investigate your local laws. I would recommend visiting the website of the HSLDA, that's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They have an exhaustive, data set on, what the laws are in each state, what you should do if you're considering homeschooling, what you should know. So go visit them, hslda.org, I think it is, for all that information. And it's really easy. It's really simple. It's not that complicated to homeschool, really. And really anybody can do it. So just visit that and to know your local laws. And I think too, a lot of people think, well, I'm not qualified. I don't. I'm not a teacher. I don't have the degree or whatever. And I will say I understand that fear. I don't have a teaching degree. So what business do I have? Teaching my children. But again, it's not that complicated. You don't really need that degree. I mean, the government definitely doesn't say that you need to have a teaching degree to teach your children. And there's so many good resources out there in the forms of curriculum, but also just books for parents, to help you
Right.
and to educate yourself and to give you that confidence that you need to teach your children. So just do a little digging and visit just all of these organizations that exist already to support homeschooling families.
And to realize that homeschooling is such a natural extension of parenting.
Yeah.
And choosing to teach your child something is not a foreign thing to parenting. We teach our kids things constantly all day, whether or not we're choosing to homeschool them. It is a natural extension of loving them and of introducing them to the world, and being able to be the one that teaches them how to read and to understand science, and to be the one that can guide them through their big questions and all of their whys is such a beautiful thing. And I am so privileged to be able to be the one to do that.
Yeah.
And there are days, of course, where it does seem very daunting and overwhelming, choosing the curriculum that you need, or making the decisions of how you're going to present this topic and all those things. But there are so many people who have gone before us who have done this and that have advice. And there is so many curriculums with different approaches to teaching. So if you try a curriculum and you feel it's not right for you, there's 20 others that teach the same topic, they do the same subject. So there's always just an exploration, even for the parents, to find the way that they want to teach their kids. There's a couple different resources that I will put in the show notes that I'll just mention here. I think that deciding as a couple, as a family, what your goal of education is, and asking yourself whether or not homeschooling can accomplish that goal, or if public schooling or private schooling or whatever other options that you have, whether or not it accomplishes that goal. That is probably the place to start thinking about homeschooling and start making your plans. Also, this book isn't only on homeschooling, but it was very helpful for us in being intentional about our home, is Sally Clarkson's book, The Life-Giving Home. That book is a great resource for families. Sally Clarkson talks about just all of the ways that her family was intentional about their home life, about homeschooling, about their family culture, and how they used different seasons and even different holidays and different events in their family and in their life to teach their kids important things about the world and about who God is. That book for me was really helpful, just be more intentional about my interactions with my kids and enjoying homeschooling, enjoying just daily home life. So one book that I would recommend is called For the Children's Sake by Susan Schaefer Macaulay. It talks about the Charlotte Mason approach to education, and the foundation that she had is that our children are people, and their needs and their wants and their desires are just as important and valid as adults, so that when we shape education and we shape any really interaction with a child, when we're teaching them or discipling them, that we are seeing their life as sacred, beautiful life that God created, and when we interact with them, we treat them like people. So when we are structuring their education, we are really keeping that in the back of our mind. Is sitting them in a desk when they're 6, for several hours, is that really treating them developmentally appropriate? Like our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, are they, is it really best for their bodies, for their development, for their brains, to be sitting in a desk doing worksheets for that long? So the Charlotte Mason approach is a good thing to start reading about and to look into if that mindset really appeals to you. And I think that for the children's sake, that book is helpful, just learning about Charlotte Mason and also thinking about curriculum and that underlying motive of why we're homeschooling and why we're educating and what education looks like. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurturing Home podcast. If you liked what you heard, I hope you'll check out my YouTube channel called Nurturing Home and Instagram, which is nurturing_home_.